This is an area that's recovering from flash flooding earlier in this year, and we still have had these days of rainfall. Aaron, tell us a little bit about what it's like on the ground there now.
Yeah, good morning, guys. It's been a lot of assessing the situation. A lot of the folks are starting to wake up this morning and assess how bad the damages are. You can see behind me a lot of the floodwaters that have invaded these homes on this street specifically, but just 2 or 3 streets over, the water is as high as some of the rooftops to tell you the kind of situation that they were dealing with. They haven't seen flooding like this since the 1970s, which actually prompted them to build the flood wall, which thankfully is holding up just fine, but it's been its first big test since it has been built here in the city, which is good news all around. There was some concern yesterday that it was going to get too high. It can handle up to 51.5 feet, but it did come in just under that. So it is doing its job. The worst case scenario was avoided, but they did do a lot of evacuations throughout some of these lower lying communities that are beyond the flood wall, and you can see why right behind me.
And have you had a chance to talk to any residents? Of course, Kentucky, no stranger to flooding over the last several years. Now, earlier this year, we had it in the eastern part of the state. Now it's central and west, but still, this area has just been so prone to flooding lately.
Yeah, Bernie, literally everyone that I've talked to has told me the same thing. They've never seen flooding quite like this. There's been folks that have lived here since the 80s that have not seen the floodwaters this high in their entire time that they have been here. And I was talking to one of the business owners earlier along one of the streets, and they were a little bit worried that it was going to top the flood wall and get into their business that have been here over 100 years. I did check on that this morning, and they did not receive any water, thankfully. But you got to imagine that a lot of the folks here, even in central, eastern, and really the whole state of Kentucky, have got to be exhausted from all of the flooding that has been just absolutely relentless. This is round 2 for the year so far, by the way. We had really extreme flooding in the eastern part of the state to start the year, and now in the central and western parts of the state, and really all the way down to northeast Arkansas, that flooding threat continues. And you got to imagine, too, that this isn't going to go anywhere anytime soon. So even though that the Kentucky River has crested right now, it's going to linger here for several more days to come before some of these folks can get back to their homes and assess just how bad the damage is.
Have there been evacuations? I know there has to be some sort of place for people to go, shelters, other services, because as you can see, there's really nothing you can do until the water even goes away. You can't start that cleanup.
Yeah, a lot of the hotels around the immediate area of Frankfort have filled up. I did talk to a woman earlier who did have to evacuate, and she couldn't afford a hotel and has been sleeping in her van overnight. Now, it did look like she was able to at least gain access to her home. It seemed the floodwaters did avoid it, but she was in that mandatory evac area where she had to evacuate just in case. And she said she simply couldn't afford a hotel, so she slept in her van overnight. And I assume I hate to say it, but it's going to be the case for, I'm sure, more residents across this city until they can get access back to their homes, especially after all of these hotels fill up and they can't commute maybe 30 plus minutes to get to another hotel.
Aaron Rigsby, some sad stories, unfortunately, and just terrifying images behind you in Frankfort, Kentucky, one of the hardest hit areas with our recent rain area. Aaron, thanks.